Hi, this is Bruce Buffer, your voice of the Octagon, and you're listening to MMA Mental.
Okay, we are now joined by UFC welterweight Chris Clements. How are things with you, Chris?
Yeah, they're going pretty good. I'm just sitting here freezing my butt off over in Canada. They hit by a blizzard today, so I'm just kind of trapped in the house.
What have you got quite a snowfall over there?
Yeah, I got close to a foot or two outside today, so.
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm from the UK, and literally, if we have inches of snow, our whole country comes to a halt. So I don't know how you cope with so much snow over there.
I don't like the wind. I don't like it one bit.
Okay, so let's just jump straight in. Have you got anything announced? Have you got any fights coming up that you're aware of?
No, nothing lined up. I'm just recovering from shoulder surgery. I had shoulder surgery at the end of September, so I'm going to take 6 months off completely to let it heal up, and then I'm getting to the point where I can start using it again now, so I just got to wait till I'm 100% before I fight again.
How did you hurt your shoulder?
I actually heard it before I fought in the UFC. Right when I fought Chris Clements, my fight before I got hired to the UFC, I had a couple shoulder issues going into the fight, and then after the fight the next day, I reached in the back seat of my car just to pick up a t-shirt, and I couldn't lift it. My arm just had a lot of pain. So I started getting the doctors to look at it, and then I got a phone call from the UFC. And I only had one arm basically, but I waited 10 years for that phone call. So when they called me to give me a contract with the fight, I had to take it and fight anyway. So by the time I got actually an MRI on it, it was after I fought Keith Wazuski, and I had torn my bicep tendon right off, tore my supraspinatus 2.5 centimeters off the bone. I tore my infraspinatus in half, and I tore my labrum. So I had quite a few issues going on with my shoulder. I don't know exactly when it happened, but it all happened before any of my fights in the UFC, and I fought both fights like that and then had surgery after.
I don't know how you're able to fight with that kind of injury. Just hearing about it is making me cringe. So I bet you just can't wait then to kind of get in there and fight healthy then, because obviously your last two fights you must feel they're not you at your best. If you've had that kind of injury, that's got to have hampered you even in your preparation for the fights.
During the fight, you don't feel it a whole lot. Both fights I had to give up my back a lot more than I normally would because I couldn't post. I couldn't post on my arm behind me or to my side. I could only stand up from like an all fours position. So that's why I had to give up my back and turn my back because I couldn't get up any other way. But in the fight, like as far as throwing punches and things, I didn't really feel it from adrenaline. But the preparation, the training camps were really, really hard. I couldn't wrestle. I could hardly do any jiu-jitsu. I could hit pads maybe once a week, but I worked so hard to get to the UFC. I didn't want to throw my opportunity away and tell them, I didn't know if I get the phone call again if I turned the fights down. So I had to do what I had to do. But it's threw off my timing a lot. I didn't get to spar a lot. Like wrestling was right out the window, but my weight cuts were easy, and I got to do a lot of cardio. Because all the training I could do was really jog. So.
You talk about your weight cuts. How much weight do you have to cut to get down to welterweight normally?
Normally I walk around at 205 pounds. But I usually do that pretty quick. I usually do it with like in 8 or 9 weeks. I usually just diet down to 180 the week of the fight, and then I cut 10 pounds. I never used to be that way. I used to be pretty stupid. Like one time I cut 28 pounds in one day. I fight John Alessio. I would never do that again. But I plan on going down to the lightweight by the end of the year. So.
What that must have doing that kind of cut, it must affect your cardio. Surely 28 pounds in one day.
That one did. It hurt me quite a bit. I remember my brain wasn't functioning quite right. It was like I wasn't nervous before the fight. Even after the fight, I kind of didn't really remember being in the fight. Just like it didn't happen. I think everything kind of felt like a dream. I ended up in the hospital 3 days later because I was 214 pounds from 168 in 3 days because I had a fluid overload, so I couldn't lay down. Every time I laid down, I kind of felt like I was drowning in my own body. But I learned my lesson the hard way.
Yeah, just obviously 28 pounds in a day is not good. Obviously, you say on most times you cut from 180 to 170. Obviously, I'm going to touch on the lightweight thing in a moment. And after you've cut down to 170, what do you fight? What weight are you at when you fight in the cage?
My last fight I weighed in at 170, and then next morning I woke up at 191.
Obviously, I think that's quite common for a lot of guys. They obviously once you get yourself rehydrated, you put the weight back on. Before I talk about lightweight, I just wanted to talk about obviously the win streak you went on that got you into the UFC. Obviously, you had I'm looking at your record on Sherdog. You had 4 fight win streak, which got you into the UFC, and of course, 2 of the names in that win streak were UFC veterans. Do you think the wins over the UFC veterans are what helped you get yourself noticed and get you that opportunity?
Yes, that's exactly what I think it was, and exactly that I finished them too. I knocked out both of them. I TKO'd Chris Clements, who hardly ever been stopped by anybody, and I knocked out Jonathan Goulet. I was at that point in my career. I'm a pretty old guy. I just turned 37 last Saturday, so I was coming to that point in my career, but it was do or die, and I didn't want to waste my time. You know, there's a lot of young guys that are coming up that are just as tough as guys who have been in the field. So when promoters were calling me for a fight, I wouldn't fight anybody unless they're a UFC vet, basically. So I was just saying, give me a UFC vet, give me a UFC vet, or else you could pay me a lot of money, because, you know, I wanted my shot in the UFC. I just, you know, I wouldn't have ever felt like my career was complete if I never got to fight in the UFC at least once. So.
Yeah, and certainly the win over Rich Clements. I mean, you talk about a vet. I mean, that guy has got so many fights on his record. I mean, beating somebody like him, and of course he's had a good run in Bellator as well. So he's still doing extremely well. So I mean, that's got to be possibly one of your biggest career wins, would you say?
Yeah, I'd say that Rich Clements is probably the biggest name I think that I've beat.
Now, obviously, you mentioned there about dropping to lightweight. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about your decision, your reasoning behind dropping down to lightweight?
Yeah, it's basically a height thing and the reach. I'm a striker. I'm a world-class striker. I think I'm one of the greatest strikers, you know, in MMA. It's just the guys I'm fighting in the UFC. My last opponent, Riddle, they're like 6'2". And as being a striker too, and fighting a wrestler, I don't want to have to jump forward. In order for me to reach my opponents, my reach is so short that I have to like lunge at them to get anywhere near them. And by that time, they always catch my leg, so it's too easy to get taken down. And it's just too hard to fight technical when I'm fighting guys that are so much longer than I am. So I figure if I go down to lightweight, you know, the guys will be a lot more my height. And it's one of those things that I've always kind of considered it, and I'm at that point in my career where it's, you know, it's kind of now or never. I'd hate to have my career end and say I never tried it at lightweight. You know, I've always thought about it before, but, you know, I was doing fine as it was. But in the UFC, with Keith Suzuki, I think was 6'1", and that Riddle was 6'2". It's just such a big reach disadvantage for me. So I'd like to be able to showcase my skills against guys more my own height.
Have you spoken to the UFC? Have you told them that you want to drop down to lightweight?
No, I haven't talked to them about it yet.
But you don't think that'll be an issue? Is that how it normally works? Obviously, once you're fully fit, you'll let them know what weight you want to fight at, and then obviously they'll find you a matchup.
Yeah, that's kind of how I'm hoping it flies. There's been other guys that dropped down before, so I wasn't planning on it being an issue. I figured I'd just drop down. I'm off right now. I figured I had no fights lined up, so I've already started, you know, training again as much as I can. I have to be smart. I still haven't been able to wrestle yet, but, you know, just doing the cardio stuff again now that I was off for so long, just trying to get myself in shape. And I figure if I can get myself down to where I normally get to for 170, where I get down to 180 and just walk around and stay at that weight, as opposed to just doing it for a week and then cutting down to 170, and see how it feels. And if I feel all right at 180 and I can stay that weight for, you know, a month straight or even longer, then when the UFC calls, I'd ask them. And if they said no, they want me to stay at welterweight, that's fine as well, but I'll just be in really good shape when the fight comes. So.
When do you think ideally you'll be ready to fight?
I seen the surgeon the other day. He told me I was at 50% healed. So he said another couple months before I'd be 100%. So, yeah, I'm thinking summertime. But in my mind, I know the UFC is back in Toronto in September, and that's an hour from my home to where I live. And my family's, you know, a big part of my life, and I'd like them to be able to all come to the UFC and see me fight in the UFC. So, you know, if it came down to it and I couldn't fight a far enough distance away from September to guarantee a fight in September, I'll wait until September to fight again, just to make sure I get to fight in Toronto.
Absolutely, I bet it'd be so nice to fight in front of the home crowd, especially like you say, friends and family.
Yeah, especially too when you fight in the U.S. and you're not a U.S. resident. They take 30% of your paycheck before you even get it. So,
That's
you know,
ridiculous.
it's a big incentive for us guys to stay in our own country and fight.
Absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you're earning that money. The last thing you want to be doing is paying it as tax. Now, I want to talk to you a little bit. I've got two more subjects I wanted to talk to you about. The first one was obviously this week. There's been a lot of news about fighters being cut from the UFC, and obviously all the guys that have been cut are all coming off a loss. And there is, to be fair to say, some pretty big names in there. As a UFC fighter, does that worry you when you see so many big names being cut?
No, yeah, it's worrisome. You know, everybody, no matter what you do for a career, you want to keep your job. So, you know, especially when you see someone like John Fitch get cut, it's scary for everybody, especially a top 10 fighter. So that means everybody who's not in the top 10, you know, could basically be cut at any moment. It's racks on your nerves a little bit. You can't dwell on it. All you can do is, you know, hope for the best. And, you know, and I think it's too, it's, for a guy like me, I'm a go for it kind of guy. When I fight, I go for it. I don't go in there to try and lay and prey on a guy. I go in there and I give it my all any which way I can. I just try and finish the fight from start to finish. So I think it'll push guys to fight more, you know, leave more of it in the cage as opposed to fighting the lazy fights now, because now they're a little worried about their job. So I think it'll make for a lot of exciting fights, especially this upcoming weekend. I know a lot of guys on that card are in danger if they lose. So I'm thinking this is going to be a really spectacular card to watch.
Yeah, I definitely think they're aiming at the game plan thing. They don't want people coming in and game planning their way to victory. They obviously want exciting fights. I think out of all of the cuts, I think John Fitch was probably the biggest shock. Now, I wanted to talk to you about your last fight as well. You mentioned it briefly about Matthew Riddle. Obviously, it's fair to say Matt Riddle is quite a controversial character. I mean, he's recently fought in the UK and he was, you know, bigging up his fight beforehand. Of course, you lost the fight due to a submission of, you know, a standing arm triangle choke, which is quite unusual to see. And then, of course, the fight was ruled no contest because of traces of marijuana. What are your thoughts on the fact that he failed the drugs test for marijuana?
I don't like saying I won because it got turned into no contest. I'm happy that it got turned into no contest. I wish it didn't happen that way. I wish it just, you know, we could have had the fight go to a decision, whichever way it would have went. But as far as the drugs go, there's a lot of controversy whether it is helpful or whether it's not helpful. You know, the more I thought about it, and after I read what Matt Riddle wrote in his statement about why he uses marijuana, it kind of says it is a performance-enhancing drug because he uses it for sleep and for anxiety and for pain. Those are the three things that a fighter has to deal with, especially a guy like me who was in so much pain during my training camp because I was injured. I could hardly use my arm. If I was to do something like smoke marijuana and get high to mask the pain, I would have been able to train harder. You know, I had trouble sleeping at night because I could only sleep on one side because my shoulder hurt so much. You know, people use marijuana to help them sleep. It helps them sleep. Anxiety is another thing too. If you suffer from anxiety, it makes you nervous and it causes stress, and that weighs on you. As well as being a fighter is a very stressful job. It's very stressful for a guy to go into the cage and fight another man in front of millions of people watching. And if it helps you deal with anxiety, which he admittedly said it did, you know, all those things that are helping him, right? They're helping him to be a better fighter. So, you know, and it's not, and it's against the rules to do, so therefore it is cheating. And if it wasn't against the rules to do, I would have the same options, right? I would have been able to do these things, you know, if I chose to smoke marijuana. But, you know, so I have a hard time saying that it's not helpful when I think that it is. So.
I think you bring up some very, very valid points there. I wanted to obviously just say a massive thank you. Obviously, I really appreciate you giving me your time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you. I hope everything goes well with your recovery, and I hope you get on that card in September as well. But before we let you go, Chris, just want to give you a chance to do some shout-outs. You want to shout out any friends, family, sponsors, and let people know about your Facebook and Twitter as well?
I'd like to people to follow me on Twitter. I'm really trying to get that up there. It's Menace Clements. And I have a Facebook account. It's just basically me. It's Chris Clements, but my friends list is full, but I have a fan page on there as well. And I'd like to give a shout out to my manager, Jason Chambers, Apex Sports Agency. And a shout out to all the guys at my gym, Team Tompkins for Life. You know, Sean Tompkins passed away, so all of us are still alive and kicking over here at Adrenaline Training Center in London. So big thanks to all my training partners there.
Well, as I said, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you today, so thank you very much for your time.
No problem, buddy. Anytime.
Cool. Speak to you soon, hopefully.
All right.
Bye.